So we have finished the introduction and we're going to jump into the first tool. And I am fully aware that this tool has been covered in the two other classes that kind of belong to this group of three. One of the classes is building high performing teams, and the other class is the human side of construction. This tool has been covered in both, but it's so important. It needs to be here in this class. And as we talk about um, mental health and well-being, mindfulness, leadership personalities, and more, we absolutely have to use this tool as a foundation. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute, and I'm hoping that the insight I'm going to treat it. I'm going to teach the tool, and then I'm going to try to show some examples of how you can see in real life if the needs are being met, what you might be able to do to mitigate those needs not being met, and then what you can be on the lookout for to give you little signs or indicators or clues that that need may or may not being met. This is important because, well, you'll see why it's important. Enough chatter from me. Let's get going. So I'm going to share my screen. And drum roll, please. We are going to be talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I firmly believe that Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a springboard for this conversation with mental health and well-being. If you've never been introduced to it before, please pay attention. You're going to use it over and over and over again. We're going to tie back to this 100 times over the next 6 weeks. You can use it to try to assess root causes, maybe identify what's going on, and figure out approaches that you can take to strengthen relationships, one-on-one relationships, to strengthen culture, and really build those environments conducive to mental well-being. If you've seen it before, I hope this is a valuable review, and I hope that some of the things that I talk about are going to spark a renewed interest and use and perceived value of this amazing model by Abraham Maslow. So here we go. We're going to build the pyramid from the ground up. So at the beginning, the foundation of Maslow's hierarchy of needs begins with physiological needs. These are the most basic survival requirements that every human has: food, water, rest, and shelter. On a construction site, these needs can be overlooked because the focus is so heavily on deadlines, production, and staying on schedule. But sometimes we're not aware that off the job site in people's personal lives, it could be that these needs are not being met. Food scarcity is a real problem in the United States. We have, depending on where you are geographically, like, you know, in Florida, we had those two humongous hurricanes last year that just decimated a lot of people's shelter. It decimates people's ability to rest. There's so much that can be going on. And what we assume in the professional universe is that these kinds of things are handled, that it's not really our business. People need to come to work, do the job, and then go. Keep your personal life personal and your professional life professional. And while there is a place for that, it's also very short-sighted, because the reality is if these basic needs are not being met, you're only going to get maybe at best minimum effort, minimum focus, minimum brain work, and it just, if people are living at this level, they're not really capable of doing much more than the minimum requirements. So let's talk about looking for a few warning signs. So you might notice that people don't have lunch to eat, or they're constantly finding reasons to skip lunch, or meals. This could be an indicator that there's some food scarcity going on. Just grabbing junk from a vending machine and not bringing nutritious food, that could also be an indicator that either they don't have the time or the money to go and get nutritious food. So those are just kind of indicators that there might be something going on here. As you look around a job site and you're in, really hot weather, well, hopefully you're seeing some shade or some water stations. If you don't see that, then the culture there is probably not paying very much attention to these basic human needs, and they're not making time for it. They're not prioritizing it. This is an inadvertent statement that the people who are building are just machines and or cogs in the machine. And so that can be an indicator of the culture of the job site or the team or the organization. So these are things that you can notice that. In some cases, workers are just running on fumes because they came off of another job. They've got multiple jobs because financially you need another job or gig work, or as I'm sure many of us can appreciate, they're doing school and multiple jobs and raising young kids while working night shifts. These things that we choose to do in our life to attain a larger goal, they're great, but they impact our ability to eat right, to rest, get enough rest. These are basic things, and the first step to self-care is making sure that you're eating right and you're getting enough rest. You can tell how much a client or the general contractor really cares about the humans doing the work by the care and attention that they spend on things like hygiene facilities, restrooms, break areas, and more. These are all little indicators about the culture and the environment of the team. And the attitude of the team, like our supervisors allowing time for people to make use of those facilities if they exist. So what can you do? Maybe some options, ideas for options to mitigate what you're seeing at this physiological level. Well, small changes can make a really big difference. So schedule breaks in protected areas. Take everybody off of that area and move to a place that's different and in the shade if you're outside, or away from noise. If the work is happening in a really noisy area, make sure people are taking breaks where it's more quiet. That's a huge impact on physical well-being. Don't just allow for people to do that. To be proactive, actually plan for them, designate some areas. You be creative, show that you care about the physiological basic human needs of the people that work for you and with you. If you're in the office and you're doing estimating, make sure that you're paying attention to including those things in the estimate. They do cost money. They do cost time. If you are working on a job where the schedule is expedited, then you can't use the same productivity factors in your estimates if you're running the same crew for 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. I tell you, as an industrial engineer myself, productivity levels just drop like crazy after a certain amount of time. You don't get the same productivity in an 8-hour day versus a 10 or 12-hour day. And then never mind the quality of the work, right? Mistakes, just missing things, not being so tired that you're not paying attention and you make mistakes. This is a safety issue as well. So we need to be aware when we're bidding jobs, when we're scheduling jobs, when we're staffing jobs, that if you've got a necessity that is going to cause an expedited or compressed schedule, you can't use the same productivity factors that you do for one as a bit more of a spread out calm duration. So these are all things to pay attention to from the beginning of the life cycle of a job all the way through the end. And if the powers that be don't want to pay attention to that, well, that tells you a lot, and you get to make a decision if you want to be in that environment or you want to be somewhere else where they do pay attention to those things. Provide water stations or snack stations, rest stations that are close to where the work is happening. Make those mobile. They don't always have to be these elaborate things that are way across the job site. People aren't going to go that far. You don't want them walking that far. Find ways to bring those kind of rest areas closer to where the work happens. Some job sites, this is really easy to do. Some job sites, it's impossible to do. But if you don't think about it, you can't assess the feasibility of it. If the weather is extreme, then rotate how tasks are happening in hot areas, create shaded rest areas. In very cold areas where ice might be a factor, don't do exterior work on the roof at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be too icy. And people are going to get too cold. You don't want a hypothermic reaction where people get too cold, and you don't want a heat stress reaction. These are all things that people need at a basic level to be able to function. And importantly, all of this is about shifting the mindset. So if you understand that these basic survival needs, food, water, shelter, and rest, are not luxuries, they are necessities, and they are safety practices, then it changes the way that people think about them, and the importance that you're putting on taking advantage of that time and making time and prioritizing for it. So as a leader, and I need to just kind of step back a little bit, I'm going to say leader a lot, and I'm not talking about an assigned job title. You're a project manager, you're a project executive, therefore you're a leader on this. Yes, but leadership comes from everyone, can come from everyone. A leader is someone that inspires others to emulate them, to follow them, to listen to them. Leaders are individual contributors. They are crew leaders. They are foremen. They are superintendents. They are project managers. They are estimators. They are the receptionist in the lobby. Leadership is about your attitude, your mindset, your behaviors. It's about your worldview. Is your cup half full, or is it half empty? Are people naturally evil, or are they naturally good? Do people come to work every day intending to do the best job that they can, or do they come to work intending to get away with as much as they can? That's worldview. Your leadership is about character. And so when I say leader, I am very rarely talking about a sanctioned role. You are now the leader of this job. Because I'll tell you something, there is no leader with 0 followers. So even if you're sanctioned, if you don't have followers, you're not a leader. So a mindful leader or a teammate might try to pick up on subtle clues. And these are some of the muscles to look for. So are people sluggish? Are they irritable? Irritability, especially with someone who is normally pretty easygoing, is a clear sign that something's not going right. Their blood sugar has dropped. They need to eat something. They're dehydrated. They might not know it. They're too cold. They're too hot. They are just not in their best selves. So those are things to look for. And one of the first questions would be, are they overtired? Are they dehydrated? Whatever. Do you notice that on the job site, there's tons of like super or early meetings scheduled, followed by super late night meetings? Are we constantly working through lunch? If those things are happening, then we have to remember that those expectations on us and on other people are compromising our ability to eat healthy, to drink enough water, to get enough rest. So if you're noticing that going on, then it's time to maybe think of some mitigation options. You might not be able to do anything about the meetings, you have to do them, but how can you make them more conducive to physiological well-being? In the heat, be aware of signs of heat stress. So signs of heat stress are flush, a little dizzy, lack of focus, kind of weaving a little bit. Those are crisis situations where people are having heat distress, and you need to be able to see that. And you can tell from the weather, super hot, super humid days, do something, plan for it. Also check if people have weather appropriate PPE. One of the things that I really like when I see are in cold climates, when companies issue the winter jackets that are high vis, so that they're definitely insulated and always covered and high visibility. Some places in Florida have different high vis vests depending on how the season. So they're lighter weight in the summer, they're a little bit heavier in the winter. And so these kinds of things, the types of gloves, are they suitable for the temperature and the task? And do they fit correctly? Those kinds of things are all important things to pay attention to. When we support these fundamental physiological needs, we build a base for everything else. These needs have to be met before anything else can happen. So if someone is stuck here, they're not doing anything else. The next level in Maslow's hierarchy of needs are called safety needs. And this is similar but different to how we in construction like to think of safety. This is not just physical safety like fall protection or equipment handling. What Maslow was really talking about was like job security and emotionally safe environments, emotionally safe emotional protection. So like when you know that your friend always has your back, and even if they agree or disagree with you, they will stand up and fight for you, no matter what. That is a feeling of safety. That's an example of emotional protection, and that's what Maslow's talking about in here. And so the what this could look like when needs are not being met on a job site, you might see workers hiding injuries because they're afraid they'll be sent home and not earn money at that time. They might be afraid of getting laid off, especially if a job is slowing down. Are they going to not be picked to stay to the end because they've got an injury or something like that? They don't want to be seen as a wuss, although that kind of goes into another category. But sometimes you might see non-English speaking workers staying very, very silent. They're super smart, super experienced. They've got a lot to say, but they're not going to say anything not because they don't care, but because they don't feel safe bringing it up. Are they going to be ridiculed? Are they going to be singled out because they have a very heavy accent? Are they in today's environment, could they be swooped up? There are reasons why people will keep good ideas to themselves, and some of those reasons can be as simple as they just don't feel safe. As projects near completion, this is a common problem in construction. It is a problem inherent in construction. Jobs end, scopes of work end. And if you don't know where you're going after your scope of work is done, you are living in a safety need zone. Where is your next paycheck going to come from? This sometimes can be why it takes so bloody long to close out a job, is people are tired and fatigued from the whole duration of the job. But in addition to that, they could be dragging their feet because they don't quite know where they're going next. Is that being a jerk or lazy or slovenly? Probably not. It's probably hitting the safety need, like they don't know what's next. Think about, I'm not even going to get in there. I'm going to, in some environments, when a single mistake leads to shaming or punishment, that's what is called a fear culture. And so people are not going to go out on a limb. They're not going to take a risk to do something new or innovative because they're afraid of what that might mean to their job security if that experiment fails. A lot of places will say that learning happens through mistakes, but boy, oh boy, don't make the mistake, right? So there's those kinds of things. One of my favorite examples of this is calling a work stop. When someone sees, I work for one company that they made a really big deal about, if you stop work because of a safety issue, there will be zero retribution, and we encourage it, we applaud it, et cetera, et cetera. And anytime someone did stop work, they made a really big deal about recognizing and giving accolades to the person for stopping work, even if it was a miscall. They still stopped the work, and that particular company did a really big made a big deal out of it in a positive way. Why? Because they wanted to meet the safety need, this psychological safety need, and make sure that it was okay, it was normalized, it was encouraged to stop work if something was unsafe. Move over to another company that I worked for years later, and they did not have the same idea on that at all. And in fact, one guy who did stop work, he made a mistake, and he was ridiculed for it. And he was ridiculed all the way up the chain. They kind of chuckled and made fun of him. And so, is that guy gonna see something, say something in the future? Doubt it, because of this infraction on the safety need. So what can we do about it? Well, what kind of mitigation can we do? We need to normalize reporting hazards. So make it a good thing, not something to avoid. So when people report a near miss, thank them. One example that I'm familiar with, every single day after a daily huddle, there was a job walk, and the receipt from the job walk was a hazard identification form that they turned in. And then there was additional training with going through it and a discussion like, oh, okay, so you found this hazard, what's the severity and the probability of it? It wasn't an onerous thing. It was like one or two things, but it was a regular part of the culture of that job site. So that's an example. Being aware of the languages that are spoken on the job site. So if you're working with carpenters in Manhattan, you might very well have a majority of Polish speaking workers. In another place in Queens, you might have a majority of Spanish speaking people. In Los Angeles, they might be Spanish. In the upper Midwest, they might have a lot of German speaking workers. In other areas, you might have Persian speaking workers. So making sure that signage, that orientation materials, that daily huddles, that documents that they need to sign themselves, make those multilingual so that it matches where people are in their languages, in your site, in your geography. Don't just assume everybody speaks Spanish. That's not true. We have a lot of workers who speak other languages that we need to meet. This addresses safety needs, because when you're speaking and communicating in a way that others can understand, remember, communication, two-way street. There's a sender, there's a receiver. If we're not sending messages purposefully so that the people receiving the message can understand it and take action on it, then what are we really telling them? We're telling them we don't care about their physical safety. I hope somebody translates it for you, right? So we need to be aware of that. So those are things that we can do. And if you don't translate everything, then make sure you know who those bilingual people are, and always have a translator with you when you're sharing important information. Another mitigation technique is to communicate openly about how long a job is expected to last. This, schedules, people should know when the duration of their trade work or the project is going to begin or end. It's really tough to live in the unknown. You can't plan any of that, and it breeds fear. And finally, foster psychological safety. Let your team know it's okay to ask questions and make mistakes. Keep in mind that language. If you're the leader on a team and you have non-English speaking people, make sure you introduce them to who the translator is so that they know how to communicate with you. And maybe, Google Translate, totally awesome. Your emails might need to be going out in a couple of languages, 3 or 4 languages, maybe, to make sure that you're communicating. That is all leading to safety needs. Because if you don't understand what's going on, you are living in fear of your job security. And you don't feel emotionally protected because you feel isolated. So remember, physical safety needs are not just physical safety, they're also tied to other things as well. Another thing to pay attention to is, job sites, walking to and from job sites. Are people walking by themselves in urban areas that might be more dangerous than others? Those are all safety. Have you lit the area that people are going to be after dark or early in the morning. Get that lighting up. Get the pay attention to people's sense of safety wherever they're going. A mindful leader will pick up on clues other people miss. So are people walking past hazards without fixing them? Is someone working alone and silently, even in high risk tasks? Are they kind of in a shell? We're going to get into some body language and personality styles later. Are crew members avoiding contact with supervisors or skipping meetings? When people are skipping meetings a lot, they may not have done what's expected of them, and they're afraid. They're afraid that something's going down. That's living in this lower tier of safety needs. If someone's not looking a supervisor in the eye, that's a sign that they don't want that person's attention. And why don't they want that person's attention? Does it live here in safety needs? Does it live somewhere else in social needs? Where might that live? But these are just all clues. Like I said, early on, you're not going to be precise, but you need to be aware and be thinking about what could be driving some of the behaviors that you're seeing. Maybe you notice a quiet but nervous look when someone talks about layoffs or errors. These are signs that the safety need is kind of eroding a little bit. So when we create environments where workers feel physically and psychologically safe, they become more willing to speak up and to help each other stay engaged. Safety isn't just a hard hat issue, it is a human issue. So as we move up Maslow's hierarchy, I've got down here so I don't lose sight of everything. We've got the physiological needs and the safety needs. So now we're at the next tier up, social needs. And I think that this one has is the tier that we have kind of the most influence over for ourselves and in a professional world. So let's talk about this one. Social needs. This level is about connection. It's about inclusion. It's about a feeling of belonging. The human mind, we are social creatures and we need to feel a part of something. What does that mean? Not only are we a part of the group and we're welcome into the group, but the group sees us. The group values us, that we're there. There's a show that one of the characters in this show, this is Everybody Loves Raymond, and one of the uncles, whenever Raymond walks in the room, it goes, Raymond's here. And it's kind of this running joke across the show, Raymond's here. Well, that is a blatant example of making sure that someone feels valued for being in the group. Some way of doing that is a simple way of making sure that people know that they're valued in the group. In construction, this is where crew culture, in any kind of leadership, this is where team dynamics, this is where your personal leadership style matters. This is very much a part of where personality styles start to come in, the social part of it. Everyone has the physiological needs, everyone's safety needs, but then everyone's social needs are a bit nuanced. So let's talk about what it looks like potentially when social needs are maybe at risk here. So you may see trades or groups of people, departments, or whatever you're thinking about in your categories of people working in silos, and they don't interact or even make eye contact with each other. Some competition is good. It can spur people to go into bigger and better things than they would not have done in a non-competitive environment. But silos are a little bit different when we talk about them in a negative context. We do need silos because that's where expertise comes from. That's where diving deep and becoming that service department. Like, I am glad accounting is a silo. I don't want anything to do with all of those numbers. So I'm glad that there is a fully functional silo of experts that I can call on to go in and help me when I'm dealing with an accounting issue. That's an example of where a silo is good. Expertise, knowledge, skill sets of resource. But where silos get bad is when all all heads are turned towards the center of the silo, the center of the group, and that we're not looking around to seeing what other people maybe want or maybe need because they're not a part of our group, a part of our clique. That's when silo becomes a negative um, term and a negative concept. We need to have those, but we need to be able to look around. That's what collaboration means. It's not just collaborating within your own silo, it's collaborating across functional groups, across expertise, across experience, wisdom. You need to get people in who have nothing to do with it because they're a fresh set of eyes. That is um, where where people need to cross over. And if you're noticing that no one raises their hand and says, "Hey, we're about ready to install this wall," have the electricians finish what they're doing, have the mechanicals finish what they're doing. If they're just saying, "This is our scope, this is the schedule, we go in and we do it," that is an unhealthy silo, and that's something that needs to be mitigated. And it is a sign that that there are some social issues happening. Because the other side of that, from a needs perspective, is whenever you have a group that's an in group, that means that there are others who are not in the group. And what does that mean? They're the out group. So to all of those people, if they don't have a different group, they are out. So whenever we see these kinds of cliques and silos, you got to kind of look outside the box on there or outside the silo and say, okay, who's on the fringe and where do those people belong? And if those people don't have a place or a sense of belonging, then their social needs are not necessarily being met. Another characteristic of social needs in danger is when you're working in environments where there's a great deal of favoritism or nepotism. Nepotism happens so much in construction. I believe, and don't hold me to the exact statistic, but I believe that 80% of the construction industry is made up of companies that have 15 people or less. That is a crazy statistic. 15 people or less. If you think about that, that means that those are small family-owned businesses. And so, how much do you want to bet that many of the leadership, the management in those businesses are all family members? How much opportunity do you think the other employees perceive is available for advancement or for increased responsibility if they're not related? I have a client, this happens, that this example is 100% staring at me right on the wall. We've got people who have been in construction for a long time, but they're very demotivated because they're out. They're out because they're not a cousin or a brother or a sister, and they know it, and it is true. So, nepotism and favoritism go kind of hand in hand. One is relationship based, and the other is blood-based, family-based. So when you're in situations where you can see that kind of writing on the wall, I guarantee you there are people who are having difficulty with their social needs being met within that context. Because no matter how good they do or how awesome they are, they still feel like they'll never be a part of the in crowd. Keep an eye out for visible tension, especially when you start hearing us versus them, the in construction, the field versus the home office pukes, estimating versus the project management. It could be any us versus them situation. And the thing about us versus them situations is those people who are in the us are part of the crowd. The people in the them are not a part of your crowd, and so you can see social needs not being met in those contexts as well. Just things to think about. I'm sure you all can come up with better examples than that, but here are some ideas to kind of address this and these social needs and try to kind of nip them in the bud. So I think one of the easiest things to do and one of the most powerful things to do is make it your job to be the connector, to introduce people to each other, make introducing people to each other a priority, and recognize that every single new person to your team, to your job site, to the employee, to the dinner party, to the whatever, feels like an outsider. And so if you go out on that edge and you go bring that person to one or two people, make those introductions, that is a huge, huge, huge impactful way of helping people feel more socially um, like they belong. Uh, if you don't remember someone's name, it's okay. Just say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot your name," or "Oh man, I had you. I remember you as a Timmy, but I know that's not right. Can you remind me?" Those kinds of things. Look for make those introductions really count. Try to come up with some thread of commonality between each of the people that you're introducing. So, here's John. He likes to bowl. And oh, by the way, there's a bowling league with Richard and whoever. Just kind of try to find something to make a connection so that they can continue that relationship and have something in common to talk about going forward. One thing to keep in mind, though, if you're introducing an individual to a group of people, everyone that's in that group of people, you want to try to introduce that person to each person in the group, or only one person in the group, because anyone in that existing group that you choose not to personally introduce the person to feels like they're out. So let me try to say it in a way that's not as crazy. So I bring in a new engineer to a group of existing engineers, and I only introduce the new engineer, Sally, to three, Tom, Dick, and Harry, of the five engineers that are there. So I only introduce Sally to Tom, Dick, and Harry. There are two other engineers sitting there. I think I've done a great job of being a connector and introducing people. Great. I've made Tom, Dick, and Harry and Sally feel more comfortable. But what I've done to Mary and Paul by excluding them in that introduction round is I have told them that they're not as important as Tom, Dick, and Harry. So there are things to pay attention to. Pair new hires with mentors. A buddy system can make a huge difference between someone staying and someone ghosting a job after a couple of days. And these initial like buddies usually they don't last too long. Once this is an indicator that it's working. Once that new hire kind of starts to make their own social network, oftentimes that original buddy pairing doesn't really exist anymore. And that you can tell that's a sign that that new hire has gotten more comfortable. Um, Celebrate shared milestones. Find ways to create a public event, a group event. This is topping out parties are so important. A safety luncheon so important. Make sure that all these new people and members are invited and made a part of the crowd. Those kinds of events, as an aside, one of the important characteristics of a culture versus a group of people that happen to be working together, but a culture is defined by or shaped by shared language, shared stories, shared history. So when you are really truly interested in building a culture, you need to have together events so that people have build those shared histories and those shared stories. This brings people together. It reinforces social belonging, and you need that. And at the same time, when new people are introduced, you have to very purposefully bring them into the fold and find ways for them to become a part of that shared history and that shared narrative. Again, language becomes important here in social needs. And I talked about language a lot at the previous tier, safety needs, and you could also apply a lot of that to social needs. It all just depends on what's going on in your universe and how you want to think about that. Um, so a mindful leader might notice those people who are eating alone, or, and this could just be an introvert thing versus an extrovert thing, but phones make being on a phone while you're eating lunch or reading a book, those are all signs that say stay away, stay away, stay away. And that could just be an introvert needing to be quiet and collect themselves, or it could be someone who is putting up a shield so that they don't feel so alone. They're doing something. So that could be important. It could be not important. It all depends on what's going on. Pay attention to the chatter around the site, jokes, bantering, are God forbid, hateful language. That's just the worst. That is explicitly trying to erode social well-being as well as safety needs, and it can threaten the physiological needs as well. So can't tolerate that kind of stuff at all. But keep an eye out for the more subtle things, like are there exclusive language or jokes going on? The inside joke is great for the people on the in crowd, but it's terrible for the people who are not there. So if you're in a group that's got an inside joke, that's a shared story, right? Go out of your way to try to explain it to someone who might not know what it is. Pay attention to demographics. So psychologically, people feel most comfortable with other people that they look like, or they share a common thread with. And so our propensity to gravitate towards people who look like us means that it can be perceived that we're not including other people. So that's a whole interesting topic, but it's just something to be aware of. And so whether you're a woman with a group of women and then you're pointing fingers and making fun at the men, or you're segregating yourselves racially or culturally or politically or religiously, however it wants to go, just be very aware that that's what you're doing and that's what's going on, and try to do the opposite to help meet social needs. Because again, my rule of thumb is anytime there's a group, an in crowd, a clique, that means that people are on the fringe of it. And so are those people in an unhealthy situation where they feel alone, they feel abandoned, they feel apart? There's time for everything, but that's what to look for. If you've got your group of best buds, well, guess who's not a part of the best buds? And they might feel isolated and their social needs are not being met. That's enough on that. All right, next level. So we had physiological, safety, social. Now we're going to talk esteem. So what is esteem? Esteem is the human need for recognition. It's the human need for appreciation. This is where our dignity comes into play. This is where status is important. You can see this in real life when people say, but I want to be a senior project manager. I'm a project manager one. I am not done until I'm a senior project manager. What's driving that? Is it that there's money involved? Could be. But I'll tell you from my own experience that job titles were very important to me at one time, because what it told me was that I was getting this stamp of value. I was getting this stamp of appreciation, and that it was management's proclamation that my contributions were valuable. And that was where job title became very, very important to me. And I know that others feel in similar ways. This recognition, appreciation, dignity, and status, these esteem needs are highly important and a part of our makeup. In the construction world, this can mean a lot. It can mean being a crew leader. It can mean being asked for your advice during a whole planning session. It could be, oh my goodness, we have to compress the schedule. What do you think? What's your experience with this? What hazards might be there? What risks? So warning signs when someone's esteem may be suffering are if you're hearing people being told, especially skilled workers being told, just do what you're told. I hear you. All I want from you is for you to do what you're told. That's telling them that their knowledge and experience simply does not matter, and that it doesn't matter how brilliant they might be in that moment. You do not value that input at all. Again, there are times for those things, but just be aware that that's what you're actually telling someone. how they will perceive what you're saying. When hard work goes unnoticed, and at the same time mistakes are magnified. So if, for example, and schedules are always an interesting one, but if somebody finishes the scheduled scope, the 50 things, 49 of them happen early, and nothing is said about the 49 finishing early, but the 50th one happened a little bit late, and that mistake was made a really big deal of. That completely devalues, and shows less than any kind of appreciation for the 49 successes, and focus just on the one failure. So just pay attention. If you see things like that, you might have people in your vicinity that are really struggling with these esteem needs. And this is a big thing. This can take an engaged, contributing player, an engaged contributing employee, from being engaged and contributing to being silent. What was that called? The trend a couple years ago, silent quitting or something like that. That can that can be the fallout from messing around with and devaluing people in there because their esteem needs are not being met. Um, there may be one of the other things too is, if this is where the phrase dead end job can come into play. If people want to continue to excel and there's nowhere for them to go, this can pull them down. They'll start to feel underappreciated. One of the things that we've noticed over the last, I don't know, 15 years. Everybody's talking like it's a new thing. It's really not all that new. And I'm sure it's older than 15 years, but a lot of times when people are looking for companies to go and work for, a common question lives somewhere in the, well, what's the career path here? Where can I go if I come in right out of school as a project engineer? What does it look like to move ahead? What's the path? And so it becomes really important to show people that path. What skills, knowledge, skills, and abilities do you need to be working on to make this progression? And recognizing those accomplishments as people go along, and knowing that there's a path there, it builds up the sense of esteem and recognition and appreciation and pride. The absence of that does the exact opposite and can do even more harm, in that way. So mitigation options. So here are some ideas. So start by publicly praising excellence, whether it's in craftsmanship or it's in safety behavior or someone helped resolve a conflict. Planting a flag here again, personality styles are going to come into play on how to do public praising based on a person's personality style. Celebrate first. Celebrate team accomplishments, celebrate individual contributions as well, to the team accomplishments. Bring multiple voices into solution sessions. Like, don't just bring in the senior superintendent and the senior project manager to solve a site solution. Bring in the workers doing the work. Bring in any tangential trade and ask them how this challenge or this mitigation technique, this new schedule or whatever, might impact what they're doing. This is an example of where doing that is a change between process and task-oriented thinking and systems thinking. So think about how one little change might have an unintended consequence to other trades or other departments, and the people that you bring in from those other trades or those other departments to problem solve and at least assess, like, oh, there might be a risk of this or a risk of that. That builds up the esteem of those people, and it shows that you're a collaborative, focused individual, and that's leadership right there. A good question that you could start using is, what do you think would work? Or here's what I'm thinking, maybe possibly, but poke holes in it. I know I haven't thought about everything. Those are all techniques that you can use to help build up the esteem of others. And really, if you're having trouble wrapping your mind around this or getting some ideas that seem good for you in your situation, in your personality style, just think about the times when you felt devalued, you felt underappreciated, you felt lack of recognition, and what would have kind of turned it around for you? And then try some things that might have helped you. Start there. A mindful person might be paying attention and looking for things like someone who used to care deeply about what they're doing and a great deal of pride is now just doing the bare minimum. That is a clear warning sign that something is going on. It could be that it's not a mental health crisis, but it could be a precursor to getting into that, becoming disenchanted and disenfranchised is a warning sign. If you hear people speaking a lot, why bother? If they have that attitude, that is a sign of disengagement. And when someone's disengaged, they are not working in this esteem level. There could be you can see other physical things. So someone who used to always have their work area neat as a pin, their tools were always perfectly cleaned and put away. They were always in on time. They'd always volunteer an idea, and now they're not. Then that's a sign too. When you start to see resentment, like, wait, I did all the work and I got none of the recognition, that you need to deal with that in a healthy way. One of the clearest signs that something's going on in this world is someone who used to speak up now stays quiet. And especially if their contributions were dismissed before and it keeps happening, that disenfranchisement is a really big deal. When esteem needs are unmet and people disengage, that affects not just their morale, but their safety, their collaboration, their quality. But then when people feel seen and respected, they rise to the occasion, and they bring others with them too. Recognition is not a bonus. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about recognition for effort and thought and results. It's not a bonus. It is a basic human need. It is something that we all need. We need it in different ways, but we all need to be recognized for our contributions because that shows that others value what we've done. So we've moved up from physiological needs, safety needs, social needs, and esteem needs, and now we're at the tippy top of the pyramid with self-actualization. So this is the need for, this is when you're living in a sense of purpose. This is when you can see what your full potential is, your vision, and you can see that you're getting there, that you're going there. You might never actually attain that little a finite measurable goal, but you can see it, and everything you do is leading towards that. Another way of thinking about this is legacy. I know that what I'm doing right now is larger than me. This is where self-actualization lives in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is when you can see what's going on. So this is where people feel like their work matters to something larger than themselves. It's not just a paycheck anymore. It's not just the promotion or the title. It's larger than that, much, much larger than that. This is a reflection of who they are and what they're capable of, that they can actualize all of that. This is where people are very, very, very productive. They're very intrinsically motivated. They're doing things because they want to do them, not because they have to do them, because they're compelled to do them because of something larger. On a job site, you might notice that these things are being met when workers feel stuck doing the same repetitive tasks every day with no sense of progress. You'll hear, what's the point? That means they can't see the vision. Opportunities to innovate or lead might only go to management, while highly skilled field workers are overlooked. When people start to see their work as disposable, like just another task, check off the list. Oh my goodness, getting initiative crazy. Here's the big initiative. We've got to do it now. And then every initiative that you can recall never goes all the way through, but everybody's so excited about each new initiative. It's just exhausting. And then you just kind of ignore them until you no longer are participating in that as much as you can get away with. When people stop taking pride in their work and when they stop needing to be prodded and reminded there's something going on there. So how can you create conditions where self-actualization is possible? This is a very much an intrinsic thing. This is not really an external thing. This is something that comes from inside the individual. But again, you can build these environments where it can happen. And more importantly, the environment will either nurture this ability to be in this self-actualization plane, or it can pull people down. So find little ways. Find ways where you're adding up so that people can be in this self-actualized plane. Start letting experienced workers mentor new hires or lead toolbox talks. One of my favorite ideas that I've never seen deployed all the way is to take advantage of retired subject matter experts. These people have so much institutional knowledge and experience. Why aren't we going out and bringing them in as consultants to do a job walk once a month? Why aren't they a part of mentoring and coaching and maybe doing a lunch and learn because they did a job similar to the one you're on, your team is on, and bring that person in to just kind of talk and free think about what's going on. That does two things. One, it supports that expert and shows them that you value them long after they're retired. But two, it shows the people that you're working with, young, medium, and getting elderly, that there is something beyond the job, that you can bring value long after wielding a hammer. That modeling of that kind of a behavior is so important. It shows a true environment of trust and respect and collaboration. So build these examples in, and it helps inspire others to get to higher and higher level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And again, you're always at these higher levels, you're always kind of looking for change. So if someone was previously highly engaged and now they are not, if they did see their vision and now they can't, if they're living, they used to be able to see the big picture, but now they can just focus on the little details. These are all indicators that something is disrupting that level of performance and needs being met. As a leader, sometimes you have to remind people of what the big vision is and what to do, and help them not kind of fall off. And sometimes it's just asking questions and helping them find the root cause. You, when we're meeting this need and people feel like they're growing and contributing and leaving something behind, that legacy, that's when we've unlocked, or they've unlocked, because it's for themselves, the highest potential, not just in the individuals but in the teams and entire project. And purpose-driven teams don't just build things, they build each other. This concept, this level that Maslow brought up in the late 1940s, you'll notice that a lot of management principles that were developed in the 60s and the 70s focus a lot on vision, mission, and values. The vision is kind of coming from this idea of what is the legacy, what is bigger than the company or the organization or me, myself. That's where the big hairy goal comes in to play. And so you can start to see how some of these things align. So those are the levels, and I hope there have been some new insights into the levels of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And now that we've explored each one as an individual component, a building block, I want to take a step back and look at the pyramid as a system. So one that helps us understand not just people's behaviors, but also their capacity. So the first thing to remember is this: you cannot skip levels. You can't expect someone to perform at their very best, to show initiative and collaboration or innovate, if they haven't had enough sleep, food, water, or peace of mind. Each and every layer builds on the one below it. No question about that. As people move up the pyramid, their capacity for productivity, safety, and leadership, caring for others, and more increases. So sometimes Someone who's just trying to get through the day might not even have enough bandwidth to care about collaboration. They got to look out for number one because they got to take care of business for themselves. I think sometimes this is why new parents often will kind of get a little distant from friends. It's because there's not a lot left after taking care of their kids to be nurturing relationships outside of the core. But when people feel safe and seen and valued, they rise, they take ownership, and they lead others. So it goes from bottom to top and it builds on each other. Now, all of that being said, you can also fall down the pyramid. You're not living at each level all the time. And so a person might be fully engaged one week and then shut down the next due to stress or loss or conflict or financial strain. All of these can cause someone to slip down into survival mode. I often think of this because I saw this for myself when I was doing some peer reviews and consulting in Detroit right during the kind of the recession in the auto industry in 2010 and 11. It was really crazy. When projects are wrapping up, when your best workers haven't yet been reassigned, they're worried about their income. Their medical coverage might be tied to the hours that they work. Their rent is coming due. They might not feel comfortable voicing their fears, but they're real. Suddenly, that person who used to go above and beyond isn't. They're not lazy. They're not checked out. They've dropped down lower in this pyramid. They're no longer caring about what their job title is in the esteem universe. They don't care if they belong to the in crowd on the job site. They're worried about feeding their kids. So things have changed. They're back in survival mode. This is survive, this is thrive, right? If you've heard that phrase before, this is surviving versus thriving. These are all survive levels, 1, 2, and 3, and thrive is living up here in esteem needs. This is where mindful leadership matters the most, right? When someone behavior changes, to sit back and ask what might be going on, what might now be unmet. This kind of shift in thinking, you're not blaming someone for being lazy, you're showing empathy by seeking first to understand. Stephen Covey flag, seeking first to understand and then make a call. Move more towards empathy than blame. And that is how you create environments where people feel safe enough to climb back up again. And at the end of the day, I really look at the pyramid as a model of human dignity and at what level we're able to produce and at what level we have the autonomy to decide what we're going to do. In a high pressure, high risk industry like construction, dignity is not a soft skill. These are not soft skills. It's structural support, and it's what holds everything else up. So here's an example of how easily someone can fall down the pyramid and how we can push them down without meaning to. So imagine that somebody makes a mistake and they get yelled at in front of their peers. In that moment, their esteem needs are shattered. Their dignity, their pride, their value, they've just been publicly yelled at and humiliated. And they might see their value as a team member has dropped. This public humiliation, there's a feeling of embarrassment or shame, either that or extreme anger and then a bad situation. But let's go down this path. The feeling of being embarrassed or shame can lead to social withdrawal. They may stop engaging with other team members. They might stop speaking up. They might feel ostracized, whether anyone meant to isolate them or not. And it might not stop there. That same worker might now start to worry, oh my gosh, am I going to get fired? This person hates me? Is my job at risk? Maybe they don't feel safe asking questions anymore, afraid they'll be called out again. And so now you've dropped deeper into the triangle. You've dropped to like the safety level where a person's emotional security and job security are shaken. And if that anxiety goes on long enough, it can become a chronic stress issue. It can affect sleep. It can impact eating behaviors. It can impact your physical health. And then that brings us all the way down to the bottom of physiological needs. And then even worse, to everyone else on the job site, it might look like this person just checked out, but in reality, they've fallen down to the bottom most rungs of the pyramid. So when that happens, other people are starting to worry if they're going to happen to them. So the takeaway here is pretty simple but powerful. When someone has an emotional overflow, like yelling at others, and I would argue, as an aside, that that is an emotional breakdown just as much as crying on site. But we're talking about yelling here. So when people raise their voice and lose it so that they're yelling, they may be doing more than correcting a behavior. You might actually be knocking someone down several levels in the hierarchy of basic human needs. And getting back up in those different levels is not about willpower. It's about whether the person feels safe, respected, and supported enough to recover and get up to higher and higher levels if they ever do. Not everybody ever gets to self-actualization. Sometimes people just stay at having their physiological and safety needs met. And also, when you lose your cool, it may be an indicator that something's wrong with you and that you now are lower and lower on the pyramid. So if you find yourself losing your cool or getting irritated faster, it's time to kind of step back and really think about where you might be in this structure. All right, so now we're going to take another little intermission.